Hello health champions! Today I want to cover 6 common mistakes people make when it comes to exercise and trying to lose weight and belly fat. And the reason they make these mistakes is that they have bought into a lot of false premises. But once you understand how the different types of exercise affect your metabolism and you understand the root causes of stubborn weight and belly fat, then it will be very straightforward to get the results you want without stressing your body and compromising your health. I'm going to go through 6 of these common mistakes, and they all build on each other. So make sure you watch all the way through so that you don't miss anything and you really get the big picture and a good understanding. The first mistake is believing the myth. And here's the myth, that belly fat is just calories, about 3,500 calories per pound, which is true, but then we're told that exercise will burn calories. And if you can exercise like at 500 calories per hour, then all you have to do is exercise at that level for 7 hours, you burn 3,500 calories, and you lose 1 pound of belly fat. Straight math. Unfortunately, the body isn't straight math. This math example, this reasoning ignores the fact that the body is living, it has behavior. It's assuming there's no change in body responses, there's no change in adaptations, there's no change in perception or set point, there's no change in hormones or metabolism, and it's not going to affect your hunger in any way. It's not going to affect your DNA, or more specifically, your genetic expression, your epigenetics, which are a result of things like stress and age and past diets. For every time in the past that you have dieted, you have expressed, you have altered your epigenetics, you have reprogrammed your genetic expression. So the math ignores all of this, but your body has behavior. Your body very much deals with all of this. And if we're going to try to get rid of unwanted belly fat and body weight, then we need to know, how did it get there in the first place? And the answer is there's 2 hormones called insulin and cortisol, and when they go up, then they're going to store fat, especially in the midsection. And the main culprit is sugar. Sugar is 50% glucose, 50% fructose, and fructose is almost as bad as alcohol in putting stress on the liver. So most fatty liver, called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, is caused by fructose. And then to add insult to that are excess carbs, stress, and processed foods, because they will create excess insulin and increase cortisol to drive insulin and so forth. And if you have stubborn weight, then you are almost certainly insulin resistant. So we can do exercises in the style of The Biggest Loser, and what happened was they starved people and they worked them out for hours a day. So yes, you're going to have a massive calorie deficit, but what happened is all these people got short-term results. And the reason is that they stressed the body, but they did not address the insulin resistance in a natural and balanced way, and they didn't give the body long enough to actually find its own balance and reverse that insulin resistance. They reduced it some by just forcing the body to lose weight, but it was like a rubber band. The body remembers and it just bounced back. Because they did not create a new set point, the body still remembered. And they also did not let the body get healthy. They did not let the body repair and heal metabolically. So only if you do it with harmony, if you allow the body to do its thing, then it's going to find a long-term solution. If you force it and push it, it's going to be a short-term solution. The big question is, can exercise reduce belly fat? Well, the better question is, can exercise reverse insulin resistance? And the answer is that, yeah, it kind of can a little bit, but it's not very effective and it's not a big deal. So exercise might be somewhere between 0 and 20%. And I just grabbed these numbers out of my best guess just to kind of give you an idea. So don't pay too much attention to that. All I'm trying to say is it's going to help a little bit, but for some people, it's probably not going to help at all. The big piece is going to be diet. It's going to probably be 50 to 90% of the results from most people, but we also want to keep in mind that exercise can have some benefit. And I've done lots of other videos though where I show you the real benefit of exercise. That just because I say exercise isn't all that great for this, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, because exercise is absolutely necessary. It's not optional for optimum health. And then for some people, stress is going to be a huge, big deal. Again, for some people, not a big impact, but for others, it could be the big piece that's missing. That by calming down, by reducing your life stress, and by not trying to fight your body and stress your body through exercise to burn calories, you could actually make a huge, huge difference. So the second big mistake people make is that they often rely too much on exercise and hoping it will reverse the problem when it really doesn't have that much impact on insulin resistance. But we did say that it can help. So when it does, how does it do that? Well, working muscle, meaning when you activate a muscle, when you increase its temperature and activity level and blood circulation, then it gets hungry for nutrient. It really wants glucose. And therefore, it requires no or little insulin to get the glucose in. And therefore, it helps to bring down blood glucose, and it helps bring down the overall carbohydrate pool in the body. So the body doesn't have to use insulin to put it elsewhere. This carbohydrate can get into the muscle. But the key to understand here is that this is in the muscle, that you have carbohydrate stores in liver and in muscles, but here we're talking muscle, that this is not going to pull any glucose or fat out of the liver. That's a separate story. So what this means is exercise is really actually pretty good in prevention of insulin resistance and belly fat. Check. But it is not very good at reversing. So by keeping the carbohydrate pool down, you can keep a lot of the sugar and fat from ever getting to the liver, but once it's in the liver, it's not going to do much to pull it back out. And therefore, mistake number 3 that people make is that they don't fully understand the difference between maintenance and prevention and disease reversal. There are probably thousands of videos on how to do crunches and core exercises to burn belly fat. So how does that work? They think that if you feel the burn in a muscle, then you must be burning fat in that area. But blood doesn't really work like that. You have 60,000 miles of blood vessels, 100,000 kilometers, and these blood vessels and the red blood cells, they visit every one of your 40 trillion cells about every 45 seconds. And the reason I say visit is that they don't actually go into the cell. Blood cells don't go into other cells, but they release their oxygen so that it can be dispersed into the cells. Then how would this get you a six-pack? Well, the answer is, unfortunately, it really won't. You have several different layers, and you have intra-abdominal or visceral fat, and then you have connective tissue barriers, and then you have a muscle, which is the six-pack, the rectus abdominis you're trying to show off. And then you have more barriers, connective tissue, and then you have subcutaneous fat. And if you have 2 inches of subcutaneous fat, then it doesn't really matter what that muscle looks like. It's just not going to be visible to the world. And this muscle has no direct connection. There are no blood vessels or supply lines between the muscle and the fat. the blood circulates the whole body and delivers and retrieves resources from the whole body. So there is no local effect. You cannot work this muscle and burn this fat. And to the extent that it works, maybe a tiny little bit, is if your muscle is borderline visible and you work it, now it will grow, it will hypertrophy, it will become more pronounced so that it will show up better through that relatively thin layer of subcutaneous fat. And the fourth mistake people make then is trying to work local muscles to solve a systemic problem. Can't do it. And this is what a certain doctor looked like when he found out, to his surprise, that he was the subject of a video and he was being called wrong. So apparently I said in a video that spin class is anaerobic, that high intensity training becomes anaerobic. And I also said that excess cortisol can backfire on weight loss. And the person in this video said that, no, this is wrong. And I really am not hurt. I understand there's room for a lot of different opinions and you can't win everybody. But what I'm really concerned about and why I'm bringing this up is I really don't like when people get confused. When people watch one of my videos and then someone picks a few words out of another video and says that this isn't how it works. So let me clarify this. So this other person said that if a workout lasts for 30 minutes, then it's aerobic, not anaerobic, something like a spin class. So we'll go through this in some detail. It also said that cortisol in the context of exercise leads to lipolysis. So what he says is when you're exercising, that cortisol is actually fat burning, which is the opposite apparently of what I said, but which you'll find out isn't the opposite. And finally, the video claimed that I had said that exercise will lead to weight gain. And he says this is just plain wrong, that apparently all exercise leads to weight loss. So let's take a look at these statements and clarify them. And very often the problem is that someone just pulls a couple of words out of context and they don't really put it into the big picture. So this will all be very clear for you. That the body doesn't switch from one thing to the other. If it's doing one thing and then it starts doing something else, it doesn't mean it totally shuts off the first thing. And if you're doing a low intensity exercise like walking or biking, then your heart rate's probably going to be under 120. You'll be breathing comfortably, slow, deep breaths. And you'll be burning some fat and some carbohydrate. And if you're doing this in a peaceful manner, you're doing oxidative phosphorylation. That simply means that phosphorylation is making energy, and oxidative means that you're doing it in the presence of oxygen, that the oxygen you're taking in through your calm breathing is enough to provide energy at that level. And this could be fat or carbohydrate, so it depends a lot on what type of substrate have you been eating. If you're eating mostly fat, it's going to burn mostly fat. If you've been eating more carbohydrate, it's going to burn more carbohydrate. If you're fat adapted, it's going to look something like this. So this black arrow would represent your ability to make energy from oxygen at this heart rate. Okay? Now, we have this basic ability, but now we increase the intensity, we increase the demand. And now what's going to happen is your body makes lactic acid. And this is that first little burn in your muscles that you feel when you increase the intensity. And this is because there's insufficient oxygen. You no longer, at this heart rate and that breath rate, you no longer have enough oxygen to supply that additional energy. So you break down glucose and you make lactic acid, which means that now you are anaerobic. You are performing anaerobic metabolism. Anaerobic means your body wants more air, so you get air hunger and you start breathing faster. You start huffing and puffing. And then, clever body that you have, increases the heart rate so that now it can speed up the blood and deliver more of that oxygen that you're breathing in. Then this additional oxygen can recycle the lactic acid. So you can turn that lactic acid back into glucose, and you can now burn that glucose with oxidative phosphorylation. You can use it with oxygen. You can burn it efficiently. And now your heart rate might be jumping to 130, and now you have just increased your aerobic capacity as you're recycling this lactic acid. And then the same thing happens again. If you increase your intensity further, now you have your basic aerobic capacity. This doesn't go away just because you become a little anaerobic. You still have your aerobic burning, your oxygen and fat burning at the bottom. It's just that you add more carbohydrate to it. So if you go more intense, now you make more lactic acid, you force your body to increase the heart rate, deliver more oxygen, and now you can, over the period of several minutes, you can recycle some of this lactic acid. So you're spending a few minutes at a time in anaerobic before your body catches up again. And we can push this further and further as we increase the intensity. We keep making more lactic acid. We are partially anaerobic, which forces the body to increase the heart rate, which the increased heart rate helps us recycle some of the lactic acid, and we bring up our aerobic capacity. So we're going through phases of anaerobic and aerobic, but the point is that we went from almost exclusively fat burning to a larger percentage of carbohydrate burning. And then eventually we get to a point where we have reached our aerobic threshold, that no matter how much we increase our heart rate, we just can't deliver that much oxygen anymore. And now any additional demand, any more intensity is going to result in lactic acid that can't be recycled. And now that lactic acid builds up very, very quickly and puts an end to the duration of how long we can do this. So this would be our maximum or high intensity interval training. So it's not that exercise is purely aerobic or purely anaerobic. It's always going to be a mix of the two, but more important than the word we use for aerobic or anaerobic is the fact that we shift our metabolism in the process. So here it's almost all fat, and here it's more and more and more carbohydrate that we're burning. We're using up more glucose. So like everything else in the body, we want to think of this as a spectrum from low to high. There is no black or white, it's a gradient. And as we move up this intensity gradient, now we are increasing, we're making more and more cortisol, we're making more and more glucose, and we're making more and more lactic acid, and we're moving ever closer to our aerobic threshold where we switch into anaerobic. We have to get over the idea that more is better and no pain, no gain. It doesn't work like that. We have to understand that exercise is stress, and we need some stress, but more isn't better. And the more that you work your way up through this spectrum, the more you're going to stress the body, the more cortisol you're going to make, which is a stress hormone. And if your body is not 20 years old, then that is probably not going to benefit you very much. So mistake number 5 is working out too long, too hard. We do need low intensity, we do need high intensity, but we do not need high intensity, long duration. And then the guy said that cortisol is not fat storing, it's actually fat burning. He says cortisol in the context of exercise leads to lipolysis, which is breakdown of fat. And this helps us understand something super important, that there's a difference between what's going on during exercise and what's going on after exercise. And which one are we interested in? Long-term effect. I don't care what happens when you're sitting on the bike. What is your body going to do, and how is it going to affect your behavior in the hours and days and weeks to come? So during exercise, that's a catabolic state. It's a breakdown state. Your body is using up energy, breaking down tissue, breaking down fiber to get the job done. And the body is looking for fuel. So cortisol is a catabolic hormone. It breaks down protein and turns it into energy. And fat, carbs, protein, lactic acid, it doesn't matter. The body is looking for all of them when it's in a catabolic state. After exercise, now the body tries to repair the damage from the exercise. And again, exercise isn't bad. It's good damage if you do the right amount. But after exercise, now you're anabolic, the opposite of catabolic. It's building up again. So now it looks for things to repair with and to replenish the fuel stores. So cortisone, and there is absolutely no discussion or controversy around this, that cortisone, which is the medication form of cortisol, will absolutely every time increase your carb cravings. It will increase blood sugar. It will increase insulin. It will increase insulin resistance and tip people into type 2 diabetes. And I can't tell you how many patients I've had who said that they gained 50 pounds when they were put on steroids. So steroids, cortisone, cortisol, it's all the same thing, and it triggers blood sugar, which triggers insulin. So yes, on the bike, you're in a catabolic state. Afterwards, it's completely different. So apparently this guy made fun of the fact that he thought I said that exercise makes you gain fat. So I hope you understand what we just talked about. And it's not like I'm saying that you get on the exercise bike with 25 pounds of fat on your body and you get off an hour later with 26 pounds. Of course not. But we're not interested in what's happening when you're on the bike. We're looking at the big picture. How does this affect your body's overall behavior? What happens after? And what's going to happen for sure is that if you use up carbohydrate stores and you trigger more cortisol and you trigger more insulin, you will get hungrier. You will have more hunger and more carb cravings that will more than make up for whatever energy or calories that you expended. We also want to understand hormones, that you're stressing your body, so you're shifting your body's whole balance. How is this affecting your organ health? A lot of people have adrenal fatigue, they have adrenal stress. And if you work out hard and force your adrenals to make much more cortisol on a regular basis, now this is not good for the endocrine balance and the organ health in your body. We want to start understanding ease versus dis-ease, that your body wants to return to balance, that yes, we can exercise while allowing the body to maintain balance and have some ease. If you stress your body, you can get some short-term changes, but only with harmony can you create long-term health. And hopefully that's what you're looking for. And I know even a lot of you watching this are guilty of mistake number 6, which is focusing more on weight and belly fat than on your overall health and well-being. If you enjoyed this video, then that'd be a great one next. And if you really want to understand how the body works and master your health, then make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, and turn on all the notifications so you never miss a life-saving video.